Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Talent Board, for providing me this opportunity to present today. My name is Darren Findley. I'm the president of Recruitment Solutions at Engage to Excel. I've got the honor of leading a fantastic, highly engaged team of recruiters who deliver a wide variety of recruitment solutions for our customers all around the globe. And the theme of the candidate experience still matters could not be more relevant for our time. And I love the idea that it's titled Spring in the Candidate Experience, because now is the time for renewed recruiting and hiring commitment. As a global underwriter of the Talent Board, we're very well aligned to the mission of creating great candidate experiences, as that's also kind of the part of Engage to Excel's mission to create great career experiences. So if you're not sure about the imperative about creating great experiences, you will be after today if you hear and see some of the data points that I have to share with you. We have two main topics to cover today. Number one is the labor market and the hiring forecast for 2022. And secondly, I get to provide you a sneak peek, hot off the presses, so to speak, the 2022 Trendicators Job Seeker Survey results. Our Job Seeker Survey is jam-packed with insights into what candidates most want and how to deliver a great candidate experience. Today, we're going to focus on three quick topics. Number one, we'll focus on candidate perceptions of the recruiting process. Number two, some insights into their perceptions around remote work. And number three, the importance of onboarding. So let's start with the labor market analytics. So for context, I'm recording this on the 17th of March, about a week before you're seeing it. And there are really three big events that are impacting us right now. Number one is runaway inflation. It's the highest it's been in 40 years. Number two, Russia has started a war in Europe by invading Ukraine. Creates a lot of unrest in that market, increased fuel prices, a disruption in Eastern European countries, which, by the way, in many cases, may be increasing some of the amount of roles that you have to recruit for to fill or backfill or even temporarily fill on replacements from other than Russia and Ukraine. That further adds more strain to the talent acquisition teams and labor supply. And then number three is the COVID fatigue. And aren't we just really tired of COVID right now? But all those things come together. And when you look at the number of jobs that were lost on the screen here on the left-hand side, you can see the big dip, right? A huge drop in jobs when the pandemic started. Fortunately, we already recovered most of those already, and now only about 2 million jobs shy of pre-pandemic levels. It's a remarkably fast recovery in jobs. And job recovery is an interesting thing, and it certainly gets its fair share of attention in the media, and especially from the Federal Reserve. So I want to talk about the Federal Reserve and kind of their role in everything just for a minute. The Federal Reserve decisions have a huge impact on both our financial markets as well as our workforce trends. The Federal Reserve really has two main priorities. Number one is price stability in the overall economy and market, and number two is full employment. Price stability is usually managed through interest rate changes. And they signaled that they're starting to do that. As a matter of fact, I believe this week they did raise the interest rates by 0.25%. Now, that 0.25% doesn't sound like a lot, but they also plan to raise them 4 or 5 times over the next 12 months. And in correlation with that, they begin to control the supply of money, which also has been dumped into the economy since the pandemic began, through economic stimulus, pandemic relief funds for businesses, and direct payments to individuals through COVID relief. So price stability is one of the things they focus on. And the second thing they focus on is an attempt to maintain full employment. And full employment is the balance between price stabilization and the unemployment rate. Now, if interest rates go too high, too fast, it slows down the economy and unemployment rates go up too much. And then people are out of work and distressed due to a lack of work. If they move too slow and do not increase interest rates quickly enough, inflation continues to go up, wages go up with that. And when that happens, additional stress occurs in the market, with organizations being impacted in a negative way on their profitability, their business viability, and their continuity. So there's your Fed 101 for the week, but inflation needs to slow down at just the right pace to keep us at just the right amount of unemployment so we can still fill jobs without having too much unemployment to create a recession and those newly hired employees go spend their wages in the market and the economy gets to keep going. It's a very tall order. So let's talk about the labor force participation rate. That's what you kind of see on the right-hand side of the slide. Labor force participation rate refers to the proportion of the total working age population that is available to work in the labor market. In other words, it's a measure of the labor force in the economy, and it includes both the employed labor force and people who are actively looking to work. There's actually been a slight recovery in labor participation rate in the last 5 months. So you look at the very top of that chart, from October to February, you can see a nice uptick. And we're still lower by about 2 million people overall in the workforce since pre-pandemic. So participation rates will need to increase to fill those jobs again. And when you think about the millions of baby boomers who retire each year from the US labor force, the last year that number of retired boomers increased more than in prior years. So according to some research done by the Pew Research Center, they analyzed the monthly labor force trend data, and in 2020, more than 3.2 million boomers retired in the year. That's 266,000 boomers retiring every single month. And now the subsequent generations and cohorts now have to backfill those jobs and enter the workforce to provide a stable workforce to keep the economy going. So the labor market's going to struggle to get any better. Both the Fed, Federal Reserve, and Bank of America predict there's no really relief in sight in 2022. Now, one small bright spot along the way that I think is a positive thing for us overall is that the savings rate for January was back down to 6.7%, which is much more closely aligned to pre-pandemic. If you remember, during the pandemic, savings rates went up like crazy, right? There were so many stimulus payments, people were kind of holding back. They weren't traveling, they weren't going out and spending discretionary income, so savings rates went up. Now, with those rates back down, we do anticipate incremental increases in people coming back to work and getting back into the labor force. So when you look at the current job openings, it's still an amazing amount of open jobs. We're at 11.2 million as of January. And since July of 2021, it's remained over 10 million open jobs every single month. And now the unemployment rate is down to 3.8%, which basically means there's 1.7 open jobs for every unemployed person that's out there. So even if every single unemployed person took a role tomorrow, we would still have 5 to 6 million open jobs that we need to try to fill. That's why we need more people to come into the labor market. We've gobbled up almost all the available workforce. So it makes it hard for TA departments is if it's Great Resignation or the Great Reflection or the Great Migration as people shuffle around to find the role that best suits them, to fill these open jobs, to move into new roles. It does make more swirl in the market and adds to more complexity as we go out and fill more roles across the globe. Over the last 25 years, if you go back and look at it, we averaged about 5 million jobs open each month. And so the number of 11.5 or 10 million jobs is not really forecasted to drop that much. As a matter of fact, it's only forecasted to drop down to below 8 million at the end of 2023. So we've got from now to the end of 2023, 8 million plus jobs open every single month. And if the stock market remains steady to growing and there's no more adverse impact from the war in Europe, we'll continue to see boomers retiring at a pace that's close to 2.5 million a year. So to continue to understand kind of how tight the labor market is, let's just take a look at February as an example. In February 22, we saw nice job gains overall. 678,000 new jobs came in. And job growth was widespread. It was led by gains in hospitality and leisure, professional and business services, healthcare and construction, and the unemployment rate edged down to 3.8%. So the number of employed persons edged down to unemployed persons edged down to 6.3 million. In February of 2020, prior to the coronavirus, the unemployment rate was 3.5%. So you can see we're kind of getting back to where we were in 2019, early 2020. Remember how hard it was to recruit back then? Well, it's still as difficult, and you have more jobs open today. We also saw average hourly earnings for all employees go up across the board. Over the last 12 months, average hourly earnings have increased 5.1%. So when you think about what happens each year around increases and performance reviews that look to 1 to 3%, you may find that that's no longer relevant and may become obsolete. With an ongoing quit rate or a quit rate of 4 million a month, that continues to create swirl of open recs putting more pressure on TA teams who are already struggling. So an extremely tight labor market, strong demand for labor, short supply of labor means we're not out of these challenging times really anytime soon. So what can we do? I think it's time to reset, readjust, and restabilize our teams for this new normal and keeping pace with the theme for today, spring into a new candidate experience. So as you think about how you readjust and reset and realign your teams, I want to give you some data that can help you make some of those decisions. And so I promise the next 6 to 8 slides are much more simple than your Econ Federal Reserve Labor Market 101. So easy slides coming up to comprehend. And number one, I'd like to thank Dr. Jack Wiley and his team for administering this survey and doing the analysis for us on our Trendicators research team. We just completed the 2022 Trendicator research for our job seeker survey about 2 weeks ago. Our intent is to measure job seeker perspectives across a wide spectrum of roles, role types, industries, both passive and active candidates, and really understand what levers anyone can pull to create a candidate-centric experience and to compete in this tight labor market that we're in. So here's some quick qualifiers you'll see on this screen. We surveyed about 1,500 participants. The median age was 36 years old, and 83% of all participants were between 25 and 56 years old. So it's very well represented across the majority of the labor force. 51% of the respondents were male, and 48% were female, and 1% identified as non-binary. 71% had been at their job between 1 and 9 years, 71% between 1 and 9 years, and almost 52% had been at their job between 3 and 9 years. 77% expressed an interest in full-time work, and 18% expressed an interest in part-time work. And one notable stat that we'll get to a little bit later, and just had to go ahead and put it out there, is that the preference, from a preference standpoint, 91% of candidates want to apply and do apply for roles on their smartphone versus a tablet, laptop, or PC. But more to come in just a few on that. So first of all, with the 4 million people a month that are quitting their jobs, we wanted to understand why. And we wanted to compare our results across the participants, our participants with some other research that was going out there. We wanted to validate what you might be seeing in other research as well when it comes to understanding the Great Resignation. We have 3 different ones that we compare to here, along with ours being one of those. Compensation was either number 1 or number 2 in all 3 surveys. Pew did the research in 2022 survey about the same time we were doing ours and found that compensation, advancement opportunities, and respect were the top 3 reasons why individuals would leave their job. For the 2022 Recruiter.com research, compensation, work-life balance, and remote work were the top 3. So for us, lack of recognition, appreciation, and respect is now the top reason why people are willing to leave. In 2021 and 2022, compensation and job security were also top reasons to leave. With our Trendicators research, we've been tracking these reasons employees leave for the last 5 years, and have really seen little change in the top 3 reasons. Respect and recognition is number 1 this year. Compensation dropped down to number 2 from number 1 last year, and job security remains at number 3 over that same period of time. So compensation is a top driver, and we expect it will continue to be. So when you're heading into your leadership or C-suite, and they come to you and say, hey, what can we do from a non-compensation standpoint around a strategy to retain our talent? Go with respect and recognition strategies to retain your top talent. That's a non-compensation way to engage your team overall. Next, I want to share a few nuggets around the perceptions of recruiting and the recruiting process. So with remote work and hybrid workforce now a reality, we can see that candidates are much more comfortable with video interviews. Since 2019, respondents have increased in their comfort with video interviews, as well as expecting a video interview in the process. In 2022, respondents said they were the most comfortable with panel video interviews, 75%. While in 2021, last year, respondents said they were most comfortable doing a 2-way interview. So from 21 to 22, the comfortability with a panel interview has increased the most by 12%. And if you think about it through a candidate lens, right? it'd be better for them to do a single interview than try to reschedule 4 or 5 or 6 different interviews for the candidates. So candidate convenience and candidate expectations are driving a lot of the adaptability around panel interviews. Let's get it done one time and move on, because their expectations around the length of time that it takes to interview and get in a position have greatly been reduced. And as a teacher, I admitted earlier, compared to 2019, 19% more of individuals expect to apply for their job on their mobile device. So from 19 to 22, it went from 72% up to 91%, as you can see in the very top graphic on the right-hand side. So they expect to be mobile. So that shows a significant increase over the last 4 years. The one right below that, 43%, think it should only take between 15 and 29 minutes to apply for those roles. And quite honestly, that number hasn't changed since 2019. It's always been the top response. And if you're not really sure if your candidate experience was important or if the recruitment process alone was important, this last stat should kind of stand out to you. And the recruitment process alone think again about how you get candidate referrals, right? So 76% or 3/4 of candidates state that they would refer a friend to an employer based on the recruitment process alone. Think about that. 76% are going to refer a friend based on the recruiting process itself. So a couple of things. Are you asking for those referrals? When are you asking for those referrals? But that's a whole topic for another day. But there's strong correlation with referrals and the ease of the process. With the Great Resignation and reshuffling continue in 2022, we ask about perceptions and if candidates thought they might be working for another employer. So we've seen all this churn and all these people quit every single month, 4 million a month. We wanted to know, is it still the expectation that folks are thinking about changing jobs? And 66% said they're likely to be at a new employer in the next 6 months. That's a scary thought for anybody that has employees and anybody that tries to run operation and has to have productive team members on to run their business. In 2021, go back a year ago, that number was actually 100%. They were considering leaving. So I think maybe we've recruited some people, we've done a better job of onboarding, we've got them engaged, and now some of those individuals are saying, hey, I'm okay. But still, 89% of candidates will be willing to learn about a new opportunity. That's still a really large number of your employee base that's interested. And so you need to make sure that you do really 2 things. 1, create a great experience for those candidates who are looking. And number 2, create a retention strategy to keep the people that you have so they don't leave. And so if you think about where you're going to go find those candidates and how do you find them today, we ask candidates to tell us where do they look for jobs? Where do they go online to say, I need to look for a job listing or a job posting? And so this is a question specifically about where do you look for job listings? And we track candidate and applicant generation data relentlessly. The results that you see here are where candidates said that they were looking for job listings. Our data for each customer varies depending on the types of roles and the industry. And you can see here, there's a very wide variety, and these don't add up to 100% because they provide multiple sources of where they go look. But as you may have expected, Indeed remains strong. We're also seeing more and more coming from Facebook, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and ZipRecruiter, giving them all credit for the tremendous amount of money that they're spending in advertising and mainstream media to attract candidates on their platform. This also indicates that you have to have a sourcing and posting strategy that'll be targeted to your top performers and where they're most likely to look for job listings. So conducting top performer study to understand who your top performers are, where they live, where they spend their discretionary time and their discretionary money, and where they look for job listings is critical. That way you don't have to use a shotgun approach and advertise your roles across all of these channels simultaneously and reduce your ROI. Some other interesting stats around what makes a job listing or job posting appealing. Here's a couple of things. Salary is number 1 at 35%. The transparency requirements, either from a legal standpoint or from a candidate preference standpoint, continue to increase year over year. But also an appealing job description is number 2 at 20%. So think about your job descriptions. Are they boring? Do you have any infographics or any video or any day in the life videos embedded into your posting? And then benefits are also highly sought after attribute in the listings themselves at 19%. And believe it or not, The old tried and true company profile is still important at 16%. It was interesting to me that the lack of spelling and grammatical errors was also an issue. I didn't even know that was a category, but there you go. At 2%, it's significant enough to have its own category. So it's time to call in your professional writers and make sure your posting is clear, concise, appealing, and grammatically correct along the way. And contrary to what some people still believe, that job titles may or may not matter, according to this, 6% say that the job title and the appropriate job title does matter in the job listings. So when you think about your job postings and what's in there, you need to have a nice blend of all these things: salary, benefits, a job description that's real, a great company profile, a job title that's relevant and means something about the job, and then, of course, visual appeal and lack of grammatical errors are all important along the way. So let's look at remote work real quick. 52% of the individuals that took our survey are working remote today. And that 52% that's working remote, at least 40% of their time, they're working remote. Now, there's been a shift in perception on when we're going back into the office, whether it's full-time or part-time, and 73% of our participants expected that there would be a call to return back into the office for part of their work over the next 3 to 6 months. So it's a pretty high expectation that you're going to get called back in for some type of time in the office. And I keep hearing about this disconnect between executives, employees, and the perceived value of being in the office. So I did some checking around, and Slack performed a survey this past summer of 10,000 workers globally and found that an executive employee disconnect in regards to returning to work. 3/4 of all executives reported they wanted to work from the office 3 to 5 days a week, compared to only about 1/3 of employees. And among executives who had primarily worked from home during the pandemic, 44% said they wanted to come back to the office every day, compared to just 17 of the employees who've been working remote that wanted to come back every day. So there is a debate that's out there. Our survey indicated that 47% prefer 100% remote work versus 22% who prefer working in the office 100% of the time. So the moral of this story is to ask. Use this as an opportunity to build a manager and employee relationship. Talk to your employees around their preferences, their fears, their commute, their productivity, and then make a joint decision around what's going to work best for those employees and the organization overall. Then you can develop a strategy from that. And last but not least, let's look at a few quick facts around onboarding and its impact. Compared to 2019, individuals are more willing to consider other opportunities if they don't hear from someone at the hiring company between the time they accept employment and the first day at the company. Since 2021, the number of willing individuals to think about something else has increased from 57% to 61%. So now more than ever, if you ghost them during the onboarding period or during the offer to hire period, 61% are going to be willing to look at something else. And you don't want to waste that valuable hire during that time. So when you think about candidate interviews and tours and day in the life videos, it's important that communication and interaction does not stop at the point of interview. The survey respondents overwhelmingly agreed that ongoing interaction is very important to them. 71% indicated pre-offer, 74% post-offer, but before day one, 79% during the onboarding process, 82% after onboarding. And so that lets you understand that you want that communication to continue all during the process. And that first day and that first onboarding experience is also very important. 74% at the top right-hand side, you'll see 74% said that the impact of their decision to stay for the first month, yes, the first month, the critical period they need to be there, that first day experience impacts that, according to 74%. 72%, not much less, stated that that first day experience would impact their decision to stay more than a year. So let's make sure that we're creating a great onboarding, communication, and orientation strategy that demonstrates respect and recognition that they've made the right decision to join your organization. 67% of respondents said receiving swag or a welcome gift at the time of offer and even before their first day would influence their offer acceptance. So interaction and onboarding impact is huge along the way as we continue to battle for talent across the board. Man, that's a lot. And there's a ton more to unpack from our 2022 job seeker survey. So the things I want you to remember from today is that 2022 is going to be a tough year to hire. You have a tight labor market and you have inflation. And you have higher than ever candidate expectations. You may call it inflation of the candidate expectations along with wage inflation and price inflation. But if you have any questions or just want to talk through some of the struggles that you're having, please reach out to me or anyone on our team. We would love to have a conversation and think about ways we can help you through it. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. Take care.